Okay, let me start with these two. And these are questions that come up a lot kind of around the holiday season. One is, how do you overcome the want? And the other is how to talk to kids about gifts and money around the holidays. So there's kind of this, I would say these questions are relevant all year round, but the holidays especially kind of bring out this, competing with the Joneses and excess and consumerism and spending money more so than kind of any other time of the year. And so what is really important because of that, even this time of year more than any other, is being really clear with yourself about your financial priorities, right? What do you want your holiday to look like? And how does that fit into your goals and your financial priorities? That doesn't mean that you can't celebrate the season. It doesn't mean that you can't buy gifts for your loved ones and your kids, but it may mean that your holiday choices look different than all of the people around you. And I think that there's two ways that I personally kind of try to stay grounded during the holiday season and stay on kind of track into my budget and how that aligns with my goals and priorities. One is understand your why. Why are you on this financial journey? Why are you choosing to stick to your budget every month? What is that empowering you to do? What is that allowing you to achieve financially that so many others are not achieving, right? Is it helping you pay off your debt more aggressively because you know that in the long run, that's going to allow you to save more for retirement and or retire early and or fund your kids' college and or get your down payment saved for a home? Like whatever it is that your financial goals are, filter all of your decisions through that lens as a reminder of, okay, is this helping me work towards and get closer to those goals? Or is this setting me back further? And that's kind of like every purchase you make, every time you spend money, that is kind of a choice that you have to make. That doesn't mean that you have to make the choice not to spend the money, but at least let that thought process be in your head of, is this serving my long-term goals or is this setting me further back from those goals? So that's point one. Point two is, a lot of consumerism is driven by kind of like this keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like we all see the commercials on TV this time of year for, the brand new car with the big bow in the driveway. Like we all know that that's not reality. Like nobody goes and spends tens of thousands of dollars on a car for their spouse without even talking to them about it. At least not 99.99% of normal Americans do not do that, right? And yet we get fed this line on TV that makes us or tries to make us believe that that's what's going on everywhere, right? And we all know, if you think about it rationally, that that's not happening, right? Maybe like a billionaire is doing that, but even most millionaires aren't doing things like that. The other thing too to remember is that when you are comparing yourself or you're playing the competition game or you feel like you can't keep up with those around you, remember that the statistics around financial health and well-being of the median and average American are terrible, right? So if you don't want to be that median or average or below that, you have to make decisions and behave differently than the median and average American. So when you see the people who have like the Christmas explosion and their kids are surrounded by 10s and 20 gifts a piece on Christmas morning, what you don't see is the credit card bill that comes in January associated with that. And so that's the other thing to keep grounded in perspective on, is that if you want to have a different net worth and financial balance sheet than the average or median American out there, is you are going to have to make different decisions and behave differently than the median or average American out there. And remember that what you see on the outside tells you nothing about what goes on behind the scenes and from a net worth perspective on the inside. One of you is saying the biggest challenge to contentment is comparison. That is absolutely true. You have to kind of define for yourself what your goals are, what your priorities are, and what makes you happy, and not seek that from the outside is kind of one of the biggest sources. In terms of talking to your kids, I've actually, and this is years of kind of establishing this as like how we think about the holidays and the traditions in our house. It's actually been a struggle this year because I get the grandparents asking like, what do the kids want for Christmas? And because basically since they were born, we have always kind of practiced within our house, we call it the rule of 4. And it's something to wear, something to read, something they want, and something they need. And that is what Santa brings. And those are the gifts that the kids get from Santa every year. So maybe I should caveat this is I'll put a warning on it when I post it that if you're listening with kids, just to not maybe let your kids listen to this one. And then the other piece of it is that then my husband and I, in more recent years, have gifted experience gifts. So instead of having a lot of stuff, we kind of stick to that rule of 4. We do their stockings, and then from my husband and I, we gift them like an experience gift that kind of is an extension and continuation of the holiday season. So for example, back in 2019, before COVID, we gifted the kids gift cards to the American Girl store in New York City. And the week between Christmas and New Year's, we took the train down to the city and had a day in the city. And so that was like an experience gift that continued the holiday season. This year, they don't know it yet, but we've gotten tickets to go see the Rockettes, and we're going to do that between the week between Christmas and New Year's. So it's and the reality is that those, if you think about, like take a step back and think about your holiday experiences from childhood, like, do you actually remember any specific gift you got in any one year? If you think back and reflect on like your childhood holidays, what do you actually remember and what makes you kind of nostalgic about the holidays from your childhood? Maybe if there was a gift that was like, something you really wanted and something that like changed your life in some way. Like, I know, for example, my little brother, who is like a professional musician now, the year he got a guitar was probably super memorable for him. But otherwise, like, do you actually remember any specific gift you got in any specific year? The answer for probably 90% of things is no. But what you do remember, right, is like the traditions that you did year in, year out that made it special for you. So in my family, it was, Christmas Eve, we always had a big Mexican dinner at my grandparents' house with like tamales and chili and queso, which I know sounds super foreign to people that are not from like South Texas, but that's like very tradition there. We would have a cookie baking party. My grandmother was a professional baker, and so she had like a commercial grade kitchen, and all of the cousins used to gather and make cookies for like an entire weekend. That was something that was really memorable. My grandfather used to read the night before Christmas on Christmas Eve after the big Mexican dinner before we all went home. That was super memorable to me as a kid. Those are the things that I remember from my childhood. Yeah, somebody's saying, yes, we still talk about the year we went to TSO. That's the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, right? Concert instead of buying gifts. Yeah, and those are the things that I even recognize in my kids that they will talk about from year to year. Not necessarily, when we're cleaning out the playroom, they have zero qualms about tossing some gift that broke that they played with maybe one time, that they had to have, and they played with for like 2 weeks after that Christmas and then never touched again. One of the things we even started doing like for birthdays is also back in 2019, pre-COVID, we gave, like, our kids' birthdays are kind of close in the year, like they're back to back from specific months. And that year, instead of doing birthday parties, we gave all the kids a trip to Disney, and that was what we did. And, they still talk about that far more than they would talk about like any specific birthday party, for example. So I think the way to talk to your kids about the holidays and gifts and wants and all of that stuff is by setting their expectations appropriately, laying the groundwork for what you want the holiday to be about in your house. Is it about making memories and setting up traditions? And what do those traditions look like? Are they surrounded by consumerism, or are they surrounded by family and giving and memories and celebrating. And giving, remember, does not have to be expensive, right? And giving can also be charitable giving as opposed to, giving loads of gifts that are meaningless to a whole bunch of different people. So that would, it's all about kind of setting the holiday up to be what you want it to be and mean to you. And I think, and I will speak to this from experience, I think one of the hardest parts is that if that is not the holiday background that you came from, that can be a struggle and difficult to kind of establish those boundaries with your family. But it may be uncomfortable, but in the long run will serve you well to say, like, you know what? That's just not in the budget for us this year. And oh, by the way, it's actually probably easier to do it in an environment like the current environment where there is a lot of economic uncertainty, where interest rates are really high. This is a good time to kind of establish some of those new precedents, and just say, look, like, things are tight right now. We're not going to buy for everybody this year, as an example. Over the weekend, because I've been getting some more of these questions, I linked up a couple of my favorite holiday posts that I've written. One is about how to still participate in giving gifts, but in a more affordable way. Whether that means drawing names instead of buying for everybody, or doing like in the office, I think sometimes is one of the places where things can kind of get out of hand. You can look at like a white elephant exchange where you're just buying one gift to contribute as opposed to buying some little tchotchke for everybody, for example. So, it comes from establishing your goals and priorities for yourself, filtering everything through that lens, defining what you want the holiday to mean to you, and severing that tie with kind of consumerism. And that still doesn't mean that you have to take any of the magic or any of the joy out of the holiday. The other thing, and I shared in my stories last night, the local event that we went to, is there are so many holiday experiences and memories that can be made that don't have to cost a whole lot of money, and then in fact can be free. Many towns and local municipalities and parks and local organizations put on a ton of holiday events that cost little or absolutely nothing. Last night we went into our town center between the library and the historical society and town hall, and like the local farmers organization. There were so many different things for the kids to do over the course of like 3+ hours, and it was totally free. The library had make and take arts and crafts for the kids. They could write and mail letters to Santa. The historical society, there are a couple houses downtown that have been restored, and people like dress in period costumes. And you can walk through and see like the original town store that's attached to like the family's home that they lived in, and they'll explain to you like how they lived. They have like a replica of like the one-room schoolhouse with like the original furniture from the first school, so we could walk through all of that. They hire, and the town pays for this, they hire like an ice carving artist, and you could go stand there and you watch this guy out of just a block of ice carve like a beautiful train engine. And like my kids were fascinated with that. Then all the farmers line up and they have a lit tractor parade that went by for like a solid half hour. And then Santa came and lit the tree downtown. So those are, and all the kids' friends are there because the whole town comes out and celebrates it. And it's very like Hallmark movie, but it was like the best experience. And it cost absolutely nothing. Like all the historical societies and things like that have out donation jars. Oh, there was also a gingerbread house contest where people could bring in their gingerbread houses, and then the whole town votes on kind of like their favorite. So all of those different activities were going on. It was all entirely free. There are things that go on like that in all kinds of towns and communities all over. And oh, by the way, like you don't have to live in our town to come. Like it's like anybody can come to something like that. So keep an eye out for things like that. Things like at your local library, or like your local Boys and Girls Club may be hosting things like that, or the various town halls in your area may be hosting things like that. Or if you have like botanical gardens or public parks that may have things like that. Another thing that we do every year that is very affordable is there's like a drive-through light And I believe it is a fundraiser for Goodwill, but it's like $10 a car. So, it's not based on how many people you bring, but like the number of cars. But it's like $10 a car and you like drive through. So that's something else that we tend to do every holiday season that is a tradition in our house. But again, it costs a little bit, not a whole lot, but it's the kids all every year, like, when are we going to go do that? So make the holiday what you want to make it, as expensive or least expensive as fits with your financial goals and priorities, and make it less about the stuff and more about the experience and the memories. And I think that, that helps kind of make all those things fall into alignment. It can be a difficult transition if that's not kind of how you were raised, how your family celebrates the holiday, how you've celebrated the holidays as a family yourself. But one, if your kids are too little to kind of talk about like financial goals and priorities, that transition for them was probably, like they're not even going to, like if they're toddlers, they're not even going to necessarily remember that it was out of control one year and you toned it down the next year. But if they're older, you can start to talk about like, look, we're working towards X, Y, and Z. And so we're going to keep things a little calmer and simpler this year. And the other thing too is that like, even if you tone it down, like you can only make financial decisions for yourself. If other people around you, like relatives, etc., still go out of control for the holidays, like that's their choice. It doesn't have to be your choice. So anyway, I hope you can take some bits and pieces of that and incorporate it into your holiday to kind of help yourself stay on track, to kind of relieve some of that financial stress and overwhelm. To find ways to celebrate with your kids and talk about and establish the traditions that you want to have with your kids that make financial sense and kind of don't like the biggest thing is like so many people overdo the holiday and blow all the hard work they've done all year and making progress on their financial goals and priorities. And I think especially ahead of 2023, when many experts are predicting that there's going to be a recession, like of all the holidays, this is kind of the one to like maybe try to rein it in so that you're in a better position going into 2023 in the event that like you have job loss or the economy slows down, or if you're commission based and your income suffers. This is a good time to kind of rein it in if you haven't done that before. So I hope that helps. Okay.